when in actuality the sheriff's revenue fell short, which requires us to dip into reserves because he didn't have the federal prisoner revenue that we expected. And that goes right in the minutes.
And you're never going to get that money. I mean, the possibility is, if you did it the other way, that the revenue comes in and then you wouldn't need to pull it off. You could release that encumbrance if the revenues come in, and you wouldn't need to pull it off of another budgeted line.
We're of the opinion we don't need it there in the first place, because if he uses these transfers and she doesn't use hers, the net result to general revenue is the same. Yeah, we gave him extra, but she took less. And that way we've actually accurately accounted for who went over. It went over the sheriff's budget, not 911.
Well, but the encumbrance on 911 won't show 911 going over budget. It's just like
Because they're not
holding
going to
that
go
part
over
of it
budget.
aside.
But if the sheriff in fact needs all that, and then they need some of it, that money's not there for them. They have to go and get it someplace else. You're taking a budget constraint that is exclusively the sheriff's, and you're making it 911's, and then when she needs something and it's not there, then it becomes everybody else's. That's not accurate.
No, I'm not making it 911's. It's part of general revenues.
Right, but if the sheriff uses all of her transfers, what does she have left in transfers?
$347,000.
Let's say the sheriff uses all those up, and she needs 100 of those. That becomes her problem. And the odds are that she will need the greatest portion of those transfers based on past history, and odds are, based on the rate at which federal prisoners are coming into prison, he's going to go over. Well, in order to stay in budget, we allocated $440,000. If he makes $140,000 on federal prisoners, we're on the hook for $300,000 that it's going to have to go over. And if we show that we made an extra $300,000 transfer to him, that's the accurate way to describe what really happened. 911 shouldn't even be in this. They have no problems. Margie's working within budget. She's not used her transfers. But the sheriff, and it's not his fault. What he's spending is within his budgeted amount. The revenue's not there. Yes, sir.
Dan, is this an isolated occurrence this month only where their bills are short, or is this going to be an every month occurrence for the rest of the year?
Probably going to, because of the timing of the immigration prisoner money, we have not started to see a steady flow of that. Even though they pay about 2 months in arrears. So they came in late June. We ought to start seeing some revenue, some steady revenue, because we have 10 to 15 prisoners. Very likely, because we budgeted revenue for September, October, November, December in federal prisoners, ICE and marshals. Well, we don't have any marshals. So we're not going to hit our $440,000 that we estimated.
Well, he's not over budget.
No, he's actually under budget.
He's under budget, but he's extremely
not there.
shortened on revenue.
Right.
Understand.
Revenue's not there, so in all likelihood, a transaction similar to this is going to have to take place once or twice a month until the end of the year.
And I understand that you're legally obligated to ensure that you provide him with what was set as his budget on the 28th. I understand that.
And I'm obligated to give him what I've budgeted, and I'm also restricted from taking it away from somebody
No,
else.
I understand.
And while it's on paper, in theory, taking it from 911, to surmise that she's not going to need her transfers, and we're looking at about a $300,000 to $400,000 shortfall in his revenues, because it's just not going to be.
Is it different because Margie is a director versus an elected position? Can you adjust her budget, up and down as necessary because she's a non-elected official?
That's a possibility.
Okay.
I'm not going to say that it's not, but
The less likelihood of a lawsuit doing it that
Right.
way versus an elected official.
Right.
Understand.
But,
Till you cut her payroll to the point where
Right.
Right.
911 services are bad.
We want
We-
services, we want 911,
That's-
we want law enforcement, we want fire protection.
that's
I
the
mean,
point we're at, because we don't get paid for 911
Okay.
calls made from cell phones, you're aware of that. We don't get a fee for it in any way, shape, or form. That's why that subsidy is there. The subsidy is annually made to 911, not because she's fiscally irresponsible, it's because we have to provide this level of services. Now, we go to cutting her budget deeper
It's gonna hurt.
than what it has been. You're looking at, thank you for calling 911, can you hold?
Mm-hmm.
Or get a busy signal, or something like that, because the only way to cut her budget now is to reduce staff.
No, I do understand also the auditor's approach to
And
this
I'm not
is,
suggesting
you
you
know,
cut her budget.
right. She seems to be
She
freely
still
giving it up.
would have the same expenses in her budget.
Right.
Right. But, until sheriff uses them, she needs them. Then we gotta go to somebody else to get them.
And she may be in the same position at that point that the sheriff is now, still
Right.
within budget,
Right. But,
but short of funds.
where do we get it from
But
then?
when we
The
pull it
reserves.
from general
We-
revenue, then
right.
we're going over general revenue budget.
Right, exactly. So I'm proposing the sheriff has a shortfall, we take money out of general reserves, out of general fund reserves, and we account for it. You're proposing we involve 911 in this,
And maybe a lot of other departments.
and maybe
Well-
other departments down the line.
My
And
point,
then take it from
my
the
point
reserves
though
anyway.
behind all of this is what I'm proposing, that that's not in the budget in general revenue, and you're not honoring your general revenue budget by pulling money from reserves that were not budgeted.
John,
Would that not require, opening the budget and pulling money from reserves, would that not require an opening of the budget, a public hearing, all, you know, they did it last October, and they put like $545,000 into the general revenue last October. Would that, and they went through that process of, you know, so would that not require doing that though?
was that additional revenue?
Yes, it was, they added to Road and Bridge an additional $545,000 out of the reserve fund. So, what, that's, yes, you know, they actually, they had already spent the $545,000 and they had to cover some bills that they,
Right.
so, I mean.
That's a little different animal there.
I know, but is that not the proper way to do it? I'm asking. I don't know. I mean, isn't it not the proper way to open the budget? You know, drop in the money in individual line items and then close
That was
it.
the very bottom end of the budget. In order to put they had to blow the budget out to catch up with those bills, the asphalt and all that kind of stuff.
Right, I understand that.
They had to put additional income in there to cover those expenses. We're still within that bottom line.
That's 16 million.
Yeah.
Yes, I understand. Yeah, and I see that too. I'm asking because I'm you know, I'm trying maybe to clarify, you know, the moving. I understand what my understanding of this is. Margie is willing to let this money go to this other, you know.
I never ever heard Margie talk about it ever. You?
Well, isn't this
Who would that go
911
to?
fund that she's letting go gonna go to the sheriff?
I never heard anything about that at all. I
Okay,
never
that's
talked to
then
Margie again.
then I'm
Never.
confused.
Does she even know this?
I don't even think she knows about it unless,
Okay, well, is that what's happening? 911 is basically gonna have some money removed from it and moved over to the sheriff's department?
No,
no, that's what
Okay,
Deanna was
cool,
proposing. That's
cool.
what Deanna was proposing.
No,
I get it.
it's what I was suggesting, there's a set aside amount of money for transfers in general revenue, from general revenue to whatever other fund might need it, road and bridge, law enforcement, 911,
Okay.
assessment. Apparently, we used to do transfers to assessment too, and that kind of went away. We don't need to do that anymore.
We were close this year. We had one budgeted and then we cut it out.
So, you know, at the beginning of the year, they anticipate what amount might be needed out of general revenue to help those other funds make ends meet, you know, and sometimes it's just a timing issue of their expenses are hitting before the revenue comes in, and so the fund balance is not there, and it's just a temporary need at that time. But, which possibly maybe isn't the way we've been budgeting it and planning it, but.
To go back to something you said earlier, John, the hearings that they had last year was to make the budget bigger.
Understand.
We're still within the confines.
We're lacking revenue.
We're lacking revenue in that particular spot especially. But if we, take the road and bridge budget, for instance. I budgeted $1.1 million for asphalt, $350,000 for gravel, things along those lines. Theoretically, if asphalt comes in at 1.2 and gravel comes in at 250, speaking hypothetically, my bottom line's still the same.
It's a wash.
It's a wash.
Understand.
But if the sheriff's prisoner revenue doesn't change, and let's say sales tax drops 10% between now and the end of the year,
We're in trouble.
we're going to be transferring money to
From the emergency fund.
the emergency fund is actually only
Or
money
reserves.
out of reserves.
Now,
We're
would that-
required to
Well,
have
the emergency fund is in the budget,
$135,000. Right.
Would that transfer from the emergency or the reserve fund, or would that have to require the budget to be open to move that money in? Or no, what you're saying is that since we are committed to the 16 million, we can go ahead and move that automatically without opening the budget, as long as we stay 16 million or under.
Right, which is exactly what
Okay.
took place
I understand.
in '09. Took place. It was audited. And the only thing the state auditor had to say about it was they kind of gave a double-edged sword answer. You have to pay the expenses, but you should have cut his revenue in the beginning of the year.
Okay. No, I understand now.
The money was paid directly out of reserves to pay the sheriff's bills because his revenue was short, which is exactly what we're proposing now. It's passed an audit.
But do I also hear you saying, though, you expect general revenue to probably go over budget by at least $300,000 because of money that law enforcement trust is going to need in transfer?
In the amount of transfers is going to go up, yes. The amount of money that we go over in transfers is going to be directly proportional to the amount that our budget falls short. Because when we have a revenue, if our revenue is less than the expenses that we allocated to these people, in a horrible world, if sales tax goes in the tank, every month we're going to have to do a transfer from general revenue into this, and this to make ends meet. That's in a horrible world.
But I just want to make sure I understand. As far as gross appropriations for expenditures within general revenue, you're saying because it can't be pulled off of any other budgeted area, because you have to give, use the treasurer for example, you have to give her the amount of budget to spend what you gave her to spend in the budget, you have to give me what you gave me to spend in the budget, because you can't shortfall anybody else. So you are saying you expect general revenue, total gross appropriated expenditures by the end of the year, if we keep having to transfer money to law enforcement trust, to be over budget by $300,000 or so.
No, the bottom line expenditures, they're not going to go over.
They're going to be
How-
16 million, but you're going to probably have to transfer 300,000 from.
Right.
I think the budget's going to be 16
We have
million.
to, whether we like it or not, we have to replace that revenue.
Yeah, I understand that.
It has to be done. The sooner you get that where you can make
Okay,
it
but what I'm
palatable.
talking about doesn't have anything to do with revenue. It's gross expenditures.
It's going to be a transfer.
Which was a budgeted expenditure.
Right.
And it's gonna go over that
Right.
budget. But you're not gonna encumber any other area of the budget to pull that amount from. So if all your other budgeted areas expend exactly what you thought they were gonna spend, and transfers to law enforcement trust goes over by 300,000,
Mhm.
then we're gonna go over gross expenditures in general revenue by 300,000.
Yes,
Okay.
because we have to, based on virtue of the sheriff. Now, if Margie in fact comes in and doesn't use